our kids are being offered an excellent education. Not all of them are accepting it, but an awful lot of them are. And our kids that go on to college are not taking a second seat to anybody.
I wouldn't, you know, you might have to find the right kind of kids, but I certainly wouldn't forget, if you're going to have any type of public meetings, and especially when it gets to education, is have some kids there.
Mm-hmm. And we were at
it's darn hard for someone to ask a kid a question and then ridicule it right away. You know, that's pretty powerful.
Sure.
And
when we presented at the Iowa Association of School Boards, Chris and Chuck and I, as a whole grade sharing district with a district from northeastern Iowa, they brought 2 students with them.
Yep.
And it was very powerful to hear
Yep.
those kids talk about their advantages, because they had been a student in a school that was small and then moved to a little bit bigger school. And, you know, it's different. It carries a different message. There would be places in here under educational programs. Mm-hmm. There'd be places in here where kids could provide information, and they could certainly prepare it on their own. I mean, we don't need to feed the information to them because they know what those benefits are.
Well, we get some very sophisticated students, and they'll organize it better than we will, probably.
I went to a middle school quiz bowl.
Okay, we're talking a lot about doing this, and it sort of sounds like from this group, is it sort of consensus to maybe we need some public meetings that are organized in a way to answer the public's questions?
I was just thinking maybe we could split this in half, and the first meeting say, publicize, these are the things we're going to talk about. These are the things, if you have questions on, come with questions. And then the second meeting would be the second half. And then also, you know, say that any questions that we can't answer, we will answer at the second one. I guess my question is, are we going to have just one, or are we going to have one in SAC and one in Lakeview Wall Lake?
Just somewhere in between.
Or somewhere in between,
Well,
Carol?
I think you should have a meeting in each district. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. Because that'll give them an opportunity if they can't make that one because of conflicts, then they could do the other one.
Yep.
So.
Hey, I got a question here. It says, you know, we talked about maybe having a petition ready and all that kind of stuff. But on this, you know, that one PowerPoint that the lady had for us, it says that the petition has to have a whole bunch of stuff here that we don't have. And it says that, you know, they recommend the services of an attorney to develop it. What's the process to get that started? Get the petition ready?
I would bet if you told me tonight by noon tomorrow we could have a petition.
Okay.
That would have all the elements that are necessary. I think Iowa Association of School Boards probably has an example. Iowa Association of School Boards has an attorney, and I think if Mary was in the office tomorrow by noon, she could probably get me a petition that had the appropriate language that's required. I could ask for it tomorrow, and it'd be here if we wanted to look at it, and we wouldn't have to hire an attorney to do that. Their attorney.
It could be as simple as we, the undersigned petition, or you offer.
I would just have to say to her, we're looking at section something or other on the DE handbook. Have you got any samples, or can you write one for us?
It doesn't have to be a big.
So what's the timeline? Let's say the vote is in September. When do we need to have the signatures by? When should we have these meetings by?
And how long can you hold those signatures? You know, if you get them all right away, how long can you hold those?
Well, once they're filed.
Do you remember getting a sheet that looks
enough time to get it?
Do you remember getting a sheet that looks like this? And I'd want somebody else looking over this timeline, but at the bottom, and I just worked it backwards. At the bottom I put, an election must be held by, and I said November 1st, November 30th of the calendar year prior to July 1st, beginning of reorganization. So I used as an example, if we're going to begin reorganization July 1st of 2011, then the election must be held in February, April, or September of 2010. Okay, so that wasn't doing it as fast as possible, but this is just one option. So then there's an appeal process that there has to be. But if you start at the top of this, the petition is filed with the AEA that has 20% of the qualified electors or 400 qualified voters. Then you need up to 60 days after the petition is filed for citizens to file objections. Okay? And then there's a public hearing within 10 days of the final date of the objections, because remember, with that petition, people can say that the petition can be to opt out of the actual district. And then the AEA has a decision on that hearing within 10 days, and an appeal to that hearing can come back to the AEA board in 20 days. That all would fit this. We need to start relatively soon for a September election. But if that's the consideration, our director of our AEA really needs to become involved with setting out these timelines for us, because the AEA really walks through this process with a school district. They're responsible if a school district's interested in reorganization. So what I would do tomorrow would be to call Kay and say, this committee is talking about reorganization, and if there was to be a vote in September, tell us what our timeline really ought to look like, and when do you need petitions, and what's the logical timeline? I think this is pretty close. She didn't give this to me.
Again, if we have a September vote in 09 reorganization, and assuming it passed, it would be July 1 of 10.
Yes,
right?
a year from this coming July.
Okay.
Yep.
Just making sure.
And that would not, we would not miss
And
a
we would
year
not
of
miss any
funding. Yep.
Okay.
But if we have to have at least a 60-day window in there, that means we'd have to have the petitions by end of June.
Sure.
So, and this is April 7th.
That's 60 days is for objections. And what if you get objections, does that make it longer? What do you do with objections?
The objections are heard by the
AEA.
AEA. Remember, she talked about the
They have the
AEA,
final say.
AEA board hears the objections.
So we don't have to hear those.
So the
Direct. Yeah.
let's say that tomorrow you got 400 votes from each, 400 signatures from each district, and you presented the petitions for the two districts to the AEA, because that's who they're presented to. You present those to the AEA. They then start, that starts the first 60-day process. Okay, there's 60 days then for objections to be filed. Because remember, the piece of reorganization that none of us are thinking about is the property within these two separate districts is now esccac County property. And so the objections always have to do with those outside boundary lines. Remember, she said people
Right.
would ask to move out.
out.
We've had someone, I've had a phone call about someone who'd like to leave the Odebolt-Arthur district and petition. Wanted to know when we were going to have a reorganization vote, because they want to petition into the esccac County. And so I contacted the director of the AE, and she said, that's pretty darn tough, because I've never heard of somebody wanting to come into a district. And she said, then we'd have to hear from Odebolt-Arthur about whether, why they'd want to keep them. And this person said, well, my kids are going to be moving on to the farm, and all of the kids currently are in Odebolt-Arthur district, but they open enroll here. This way they wouldn't have to do that. And the director's opinion was, well, they could still continue to open enroll and you take them. I just don't know how the AEA would feel about taking a district, taking a farm, piece of farmland into a reorganized district when the other district isn't even involved in that. I said, well, you'll let them out, why won't you let them in?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that farmer's going to, I think that particular property owner's probably really going to put up a stink, because they do not want to be in the Odebolt-Arthur district. They were very plain with me about it, and I'm like, hey, you don't present your case to me, save your energy for the AEA board, it wouldn't be me. But I think what they'll do, if there's a vote, is they'll petition, and I think they'll pursue it, because they were pretty adamant about not wanting to stay in that district. So there's a 60-day time to object, then there's a public hearing, okay, that the AEA has about those objections, and then within 10 days they have to make a determination, okay, and then after they make the determination about whether to let someone out of the, if somebody petitions out of the property area, within 10 days they have to make a decision, and then there's another, I think it's another 10 days that they can actually object again.